what if the biggest reason you are losing out on high-paying wedding clients has absolutely nothing to do with your portfolio?
Right.
Like, what if your lighting is perfect, your aesthetic is totally flawless,
Yeah.
your customer service is, top tier, and yet you are still watching these premium contracts just slip right through your fingers?
It's a terrifying thought for a lot of business owners, honestly.
It really is. Because we always assume the secret to growth is just, grinding harder on our own specific craft.
Exactly. Put your head down and work.
Right. Taking better photos, or arranging more elaborate floral centerpieces, designing a better menu.
Yeah.
But what if the secret to doubling your bookings is actually hiding in the contact list of your local florist?
It's a totally counterintuitive thought, isn't it?
Yeah, completely.
Because we are sort of conditioned to view business as this solitary pursuit, especially in creative industries.
Oh, cool.
You build your brand, you market your specific skill, and you just fight for your slice of the pie. But the data we are seeing, the deep industry shifts we are analyzing right now, they suggest that this isolated, solitary approach is rapidly becoming a massive liability.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. So, welcome to a deep dive into the completely evolving business of matrimony.
It's changing so fast.
It really is. We are going to look at the wedding industry through a radically different lens today. Our core mission over, the next hour or so, is exploring how professionals in this space, whether you're a planner, a venue owner, a DJ, or a caterer, can fundamentally shift their business model.
Right, from a solo act to something much bigger.
Exactly. We are talking about moving away from selling an isolated, standalone service and moving toward architecting and selling entire curated ecosystems.
Which, that represents a profound paradigm shift.
Yeah.
It requires moving from the mindset of a solitary contractor to the mindset of an experienced architect.
Yeah.
And this isn't just some abstract business theory we're talking about.
No, not at all.
We are looking at incredibly specific, highly actionable strategies that vendors are currently deploying to completely dominate their local and honestly even international markets.
Yeah, and I want to focus right up front on where these vendors are actually finding this guidance, because that is a massive part of the story here.
Right, the sourcing of the strategy.
Exactly. They aren't going to, traditional business schools for this. They are diving into highly niche, targeted articles and resources on digital platforms, specifically platforms like Weddizer.
Which is fascinating how that platform is being utilized now.
It really is. They are utilizing the article section on these business-focused websites to find exact step-by-step guidance on how to deal with complex wedding events and how to structure these intricate cross-promotional ecosystems. So let's just get right into it. Because the underlying reason this shift is happening at all, it isn't just because vendors want to make more money.
No, it's much deeper than that.
Right. It's happening because the people paying for these weddings have fundamentally changed.
That is the absolute bedrock of this entire conversation. You cannot understand the solution until you deeply, deeply understand the psychological state of the modern consumer.
Right. You have to know who you're selling to.
Exactly. The couples getting married today, the ones holding the budgets right now, they are completely different from the consumers of, say, the 1990s or early 2000s.
Oh, completely different world.
We are dealing with an entire generation of clients who are suffering from chronic, debilitating decision fatigue.
Let's really drill down into that because, decision fatigue gets thrown around as a buzzword a lot.
It does, yeah.
But in the context of a modern wedding, it is a very tangible, measurable psychological burden. Think about how a wedding used to be planned.
It was so local.
Right. You booked the local church, you booked the banquet hall down the street, maybe you knew a guy who took photos, and you ordered a cake. The options were geographically limited and relatively straightforward.
You had maybe 3 choices for a caterer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now you have a couple opening their phones and being instantly bombarded by a global algorithmic feed of perfection.
And that perfection is paralyzing.
Yeah.
The psychologist Barry Schwartz wrote extensively about this phenomenon, right?
Right.
In his research on the paradox of choice.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The fundamental premise is that, while a certain amount of choice is liberating and essential for autonomy, too much choice actually paralyzes us.
It makes us freeze.
Exactly. It creates massive cognitive overload. And in the context of a wedding, the stakes are incredibly high.
Emotionally and financially.
Right. Emotionally, because it's framed as the, most important day of your life. And And financially, because it is often the largest single expenditure a couple has made up to that point in their lives.
Right. So imagine that couple. They just got engaged. The dopamine is flowing. They are thrilled.
Peak excitement.
Yeah. They start looking for a venue. They tour 3 places. They pick a beautiful botanical garden, and they sign the contract. Boom, another dopamine hit.
They feel so accomplished.
Exactly. Then they need a photographer. They scour Instagram, find someone whose editing style matches their exact vibe, and they lock it in. It feels great. But fast forward 3 months.
This is where it hits the wall.
Right. They still need a caterer, a florist, a lighting technician, a DJ, a videographer, someone to handle the luxury linens, a makeup artist, a hairstylist.
And for every single one of those categories, the algorithm is feeding them 50 different options.
Yeah.
All with perfectly curated feeds, all promising the absolute best day ever. The cognitive load just becomes immense.
It's too much data for a normal person to process.
It is. They're constantly terrified of making the wrong choice. They're experiencing FOMO fear of missing out on a micro level with every single vendor they evaluate.
Oh, that's a great way to put it, micro-level FOMO.
Right. The magic of planning completely evaporates, and it is replaced by a sense of drowning. Booking that first vendor is exhilarating. Vetting and booking the 7th vendor is an absolute chore.
It makes me think of buying a car.
Okay, how so?
Well, it's like a consumer deciding they want a luxury vehicle. But instead of walking into a dealership, the industry is telling them, okay, great. First, you need to go to Detroit to buy the engine.
Oh, wow.
Then, fly to Germany to pick out the exact leather for the seats. Then, go to Japan for the electronic system.
And assemble it yourself.
Exactly. Oh, and you have to figure out how to assemble all these pieces in your driveway so the car actually runs on the day you need it to. No one wants to do that.
Nobody.
Clients just want to walk into the dealership, smell the leather, hand over the keys, and drive a beautifully finished, fully functional car off the lot.
That analogy perfectly encapsulates the friction in the current market. I mean, traditional siloed marketing in the wedding industry operates exactly like that fragmented car parts scenario.
Pitching parts instead of cars.
Exactly. When you run a traditional marketing campaign as a florist, you are essentially presenting your beautiful, handcrafted steering wheel to the client.
Just floating there in the void.
Right. And you are leaving it entirely up to them to figure out if your aesthetic, your communication style, and your logistical requirements actually fit the engine and the chassis they just bought from the venue and the planner.
You are asking the client, who has probably never planned a massive live event in their entire life, to do the incredibly complex heavy lifting of building a cohesive professional team.
Precisely. You are offloading the hardest part of event planning, the team integration, onto the person paying you.
Which is wild when you think about it.
It is. And
But
frankly, this is becoming an obsolete way to do business. The modern consumer does not want to assemble a puzzle. They crave ready-made solutions.
they want it done for them.
They demand convenience, they expect deep personalization, but above all, they require trust. They want an expert to step into the room, look at their chaotic Pinterest board and say, I see your vision, and I've already solved the logistical nightmare of executing it for you.
Which naturally brings us to the actual mechanics of how you become that expert.
The how-to.
Exactly. If the client wants a fully assembled luxury car, vendors need a way to present that full package right out the gate in their very first interaction.
Right.
And that is where the strategy of cross-promotion and proposals completely changes the game. We're not talking about waiting until the client signs your contract and then casually saying, oh, by the way, here's the business card of a DJ I like.
No, that's way too late.
Right. We're talking about integrating the ecosystem from minute one.
Right. Cross-promotion. In the context of the deep industry strategies we are looking at from these articles, it means explicitly including complementary vendors directly within your own initial client proposal.
Baking them right in.
Exactly. You are not just pitching, here is my luxury photography package.
Yeah.
You are pitching, here is my photography package, and to guarantee the aesthetic you are looking for, here is the elite team of florists, lighting designers, and videographers that I actively partner with.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second, because if I am a solo business owner, my immediate reaction is panic.
Oh, sure. It sounds intimidating.
Let's say I'm a photographer. I know this couple has a strict budget of, say, $40,000 for the whole wedding. I am fighting tooth and nail to secure my $5,000 fee.
Right.
If I take my initial proposal and I prominently feature a high-end luxury florist who charges $8,000 right next to my own services, Isn't that incredibly risky?
It feels risky, yes.
Am I just doing free marketing for another business? Or worse, am I potentially pricing myself out because the client looks at the proposal, sees a combined cost of $13,000 for just photos and flowers, gets immediate sticker shock, and runs away?
It is a very common fear. And logically, it makes sense if you view the budget as a fixed pie, where every vendor is just fighting for a slice.
Which is how most people view it.
Exactly. But what's fascinating here is when you look at the consumer psychology data, the exact opposite actually happens.
Wait, really?
Yes, presenting a unified front does not price you out. It dramatically elevates your service value perception.
How so? Because, I mean, the math is still the math. They still have to pay the $13,000.
Because you are altering what they are actually evaluating.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Well, when you present an isolated $5,000 photography package, the client is evaluating you against a $4,000 photographer and a $3,000 photographer. They're comparing commodity prices.
Right, apples to apples.
But when you align yourself with other high-tier professionals in a cohesive package, your own brand equity artificially yet effectively rises. You are judged by the company you keep.
Ah, the halo effect.
Exactly. But more importantly, you are mitigating the client's perception of risk.
Risk. Now that is the unseen currency in event planning.
It really is. When a client hires 5 strangers, the risk of a disastrous outcome is incredibly high. Will they get along? Will the florist's setup block the photographer's angles? Will the caterer's timeline ruin the DJ's set?
The client has no idea.
Right. The client absorbs all that anxiety. But when you pitch a cross-promoted ecosystem, the perceived risk drops to practically zero.
Because they've worked together before.
Precisely. The client sees a proven united front. They are no longer agonizing over individual price tags. They are evaluating the overwhelming value of a guaranteed, stress-free, flawless outcome.
They're buying peace of mind.
Yes, they are paying a premium for the absolute certainty that this specific team will deliver the magic without the backstage drama.
Okay, I see the logic now. It's the difference between buying ingredients at a grocery store and sitting down for a tasting menu at a Michelin star restaurant.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
You don't look at a tasting menu and complain that you could buy the carrots cheaper at the farmer's market.
No, you don't.
You are paying for the chef's curation, the guaranteed harmony of flavors, and the flawless service. You are paying for the experience.
Exactly.
So if we are going to pivot our businesses and act like these experienced curators, how do we actually build these documents?
That's the tactical part.
Yeah, because I imagine you can't just like slap a list of your friends' names at the back of a PDF and expect the client to suddenly feel this magical sense of mitigated risk.
You absolutely cannot.
Yeah.
In fact, doing that can backfire completely.
Just a lazy list of names.
Right. The architecture of the proposal is critical. It requires intense intentionality. The guidance we are analyzing emphasizes that these proposals must be structured around specific, highly curated themes.
Themes like what?
Themes that resonate with distinct buyer personas. You do not offer a generic vendor list. You build a luxury destination wedding package or an eco-conscious zero-waste wedding bundle or, a modern industrial warehouse package.
Ah, so you are tailoring the ecosystem to a very specific set of values and logistics.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And within those highly targeted themes, the proposal absolutely must highlight the concept of synergy. You cannot simply list vendor A and vendor B.
Right.
You must explicitly articulate how and why their collaboration elevates the final product.
I love this concept of synergy because it moves beyond just we like each other into actual operational mechanics.
Yes, how it works?
Right. Think about a wedding gone wrong. Anyone who has ever worked a live event knows the classic recurring nightmare scenario between a photographer and a videographer who don't know each other.
Oh, it is brutal.
It is a literal turf war.
It really is.
The bride is walking down the aisle. The photographer is backing up, trying to get that perfect, wide, emotional shot of the groom's reaction, and they back right into the videographer's tripod.
Or the videographer steps right into the frame.
Yes, right into the frame of the photographer's perfect portrait during the golden hour. They are both trying to do their jobs, but because they don't know each other's spatial rhythms, they actively sabotage each other's work.
It happens constantly. It is the friction of unaligned professionals.
Exactly. But imagine reading a proposal where the photographer explicitly addresses this. They pitch a bundle with a specific videographer, and the text says, "We move like a choreographed dance."
Oh, I like that phrasing.
We know each other's lenses, we anticipate each other's angles, and our seamless coverage guarantees that neither of us will ever be in the background of your perfect memories.
That is so powerful.
You aren't just selling photos in a video anymore. You are explicitly selling the absence of that backstage turf war.
The absence of chaos.
Yeah.
That is the true product being sold here.
Yeah.
Let's look at another highly operational example from the sources: the caterer and the event planner.
Okay, let's hear it.
A wedding timeline is a notoriously fragile construct. It is a house of cards.
Oh, one gust of wind and it's over.
Exactly. If the best man's speech runs 15 minutes long, or if the sunset photos take longer than expected, the timeline slips. And for a caterer managing hundreds of hot meals, a 15-minute slip can be the difference between a culinary masterpiece and cold, dry chicken.
It's a total disaster. The chef is in a back, sweating, watching the food literally die on the pass.
Right. But if a planner and a caterer cross-promote and present themselves as a synchronized unit, they can explain the mechanics of their communication to the client right in the proposal.
How so?
The proposal outlines how the planner is wired directly to the kitchen via headset. It explains that the planner gives a 5-minute warning before speeches end, allowing the kitchen to adjust the plating schedule in real time.
Oh, wow.
The client reads this and realizes, oh, they have a system. The food will arrive flawlessly, exactly when the guests are ready, regardless of timeline hiccups. Again, you aren't just selling a menu and a clipboard, you are selling logistical armor.
Logistical armor. That's brilliant. And think about how powerful this is when you apply it to highly specialized niches.
Like the eco-friendly one.
Yes, let's extrapolate on that eco-conscious zero-waste bundle. If you are a vendor who deeply cares about sustainability, it can be hard to find clients who share those values just by posting on Instagram.
It's a lot of noise out there.
Right. But if you actively curate a proposal that features a zero-waste caterer who composts everything, a florist who exclusively uses locally grown, pesticide-free blooms without floral foam, and a venue that runs entirely on solar power, you have just created a massive moat around your business.
You have instantly captured a highly specific, highly motivated market segment.
Because they don't want to hunt for those people.
Exactly. Consumers who prioritize sustainability are often incredibly loyal, and more importantly, they're usually willing to pay a premium for vendors whose operational values strictly align with their own.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They don't want to interrogate every single vendor about their recycling practices. When you present the fully vetted, eco-conscious ecosystem, you have completely removed their primary pain point.
You've done the vetting for them. Okay, so intellectually, this makes perfect sense. The logic of mitigating risk and selling the absence of chaos is undeniable.
Sure.
But a wedding isn't an intellectual exercise. It is a deeply emotional, highly visual, sensory-driven event. You can write paragraphs explaining how great the caterer and planner communicate, but how do you actually make the client feel that synergy when they are just sitting on their couch looking at an iPad?
That is the crucial pivot from theory to execution. You have to make the intangible concept of synergy incredibly tangible.
Okay, how?
And to do that, you use powerful visuals, you deploy strategic incentives, and you close the deal. The guidance emphasizes that these proposals cannot be text-heavy documents.
No one wants to read a textbook.
Exactly. They must be highly visual pitch decks. We are talking about integrating high-resolution vendor photos, mood boards, sample table setups, and crucially, highlight reels from past collaborations where your team has successfully executed a shared vision.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because it makes me think of the film industry.
Okay.
Think about how a studio pitches a $100 million blockbuster to the public. They don't release a black and white Excel spreadsheet showing the budget allocation for special effects, followed by a dense 10-page text summary of the plot.
No one would buy a ticket to that.
Exactly. They release a 2-minute, highly curated movie trailer.
Right.
They use massive, sweeping visuals, quick cuts of the best action sequences, a swelling, emotional musical score, and sound design that rattles your chest.
I think you feel it.
They create an immediate, visceral, emotional response that makes you say, I have to experience that. Your cross-promotional proposal has to be the movie trailer for their wedding.
That is exactly the emotional register you need to hit. It has to ignite their imagination. When the couple is swiping through your digital proposal and they see a stunning photograph of a dramatic floral archway.
And in the very next photo, they see that exact archway illuminated.
Yes. They see how it was perfectly illuminated by the specific lighting designer you are recommending and beautifully captured during golden hour by your camera. The intellectual concept of vendor synergy instantly becomes a visual reality.
We don't have to guess.
Right. They don't have to imagine how the pieces fit together. You are showing them the completed puzzle.
But the strategy doesn't stop at just pretty pictures, right? There is a very practical financial component to closing this deal, and this is where I think a lot of vendors might get nervous.
The money part.
The money part. The guidance specifically talks about offering exclusive vendor discounts to incentivize booking the whole ecosystem. We're talking about package discounts, referral bonuses, maybe a complimentary upgrade if they book 3 out of the 4 recommended partners.
Yes, and we need to deeply dissect the psychology and the mechanics of this because it is the most misunderstood aspect of cross-promotion. Many vendors immediately balk at the word discount.
I would. My immediate reaction as a business owner would be, wait, I've spent 10 years building my brand equity.
Right.
If I suddenly offer a 10% discount just because they also booked my buddy the florist, aren't I devaluing my own work? Aren't I training the client to haggle?
It's a slippery slope.
Exactly. How do you offer these package incentives without triggering a race to the bottom, where everyone in the local market is just undercutting each other into bankruptcy?
It is a totally valid fear. But the underlying mechanism of a bundled discount is completely different from a desperation discount.
Okay, what's the difference?
A desperation discount is when you lower your price because you can't find